Good evening, friends. Imagine this. It's 0200 hours, deep in the heart of Kentucky's rolling hills, where the air hangs heavy with the scent of pine and gun oil. You're a young private, fresh from basic, bunked down in one of the oldest barracks on Fort Knox. The base is quiet. Too quiet. Your platoon is out cold after a grueling day of armor maneuvers, but you can't shake the feeling that you're not alone. A door creaks open down the hall, though no one's scheduled for watch. Footsteps echo, deliberate and heavy, like combat boots on concrete. You sit up, heart pounding, and call out. No response. Then a shadow passes your rack, and for a split second you swear you see the outline of a soldier in outdated fatigues, World War II era maybe, staring right through you. Welcome to Wartime Stories. Tonight, we delve into the shadows of one of America's most fortified installations, Fort Knox. Known worldwide as the impenetrable vault guarding the nation's gold reserves, Fort Knox is more than a symbol of economic might. It's the U.S. Army's armor center, where tank crews and cavalry scouts hone their skills amid 109,000 acres of rugged terrain. Established in 1918 as Camp Knox, named after Revolutionary War hero Henry Knox, it evolved into a permanent post by 1932. During World War II, it trained over 1 million soldiers for armored warfare, including legends like Patton's Third Army. Today, in our modern era, it's home to the 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team and the U.S. Army Human Resources Command, where active duty personnel cycle through for training and assignments. But beneath the roar of M1 Abrams tanks and the precision of live-fire exercises lies something unexplained. Whispers among the ranks speak of haunted barracks, structures dating back to the 1930s and 40s, where the echoes of past conflicts refuse to fade. These aren't campfire tales spun by recruits to spook each other. They're accounts from seasoned NCOs and officers, documented in quiet after-action reports or shared over MREs in the field. I've pored over declassified memos, spoken with veterans, and cross-referenced with historical records. Fort Knox's soil is soaked in history. Native American burial grounds nearby, Civil War skirmishes, and the relentless grind of 20th century wars. Could residual energies linger? Or is it the psychological toll of military life manifesting in the dead of night? As we explore these stories, I remember, these are based on real testimonies, anonymized for privacy. The military demands discipline and focus. Admitting to the paranormal can risk a career. Yet, these soldiers felt compelled to share. What would you do if the barracks you called home turned against you? Let's step into the unknown. Chapter 1. Whispers in the Dark. I got to Fort Knox in late June 2018 after AIT at Fort Leonard Wood. Horizontal Construction Engineer 12N. They dropped me in the 19th Engineer Battalion Alpha Company and assigned me to Building 47. It's one of the old red-brick two-story barracks near the Chaffee Avenue side of Post. Built in 1941, according to the faded cornerstone. The outside still looks sharp, fresh paint every couple years, but inside it feels like stepping back in time. Exposed steam pipes running along the ceilings. Original porcelain sinks in the latrines, floors that groan when 5 guys walk down the hall at once. The Wi-Fi works, the AC mostly works, but there's always this background smell. Old wood, linseed oil, and something faintly sour you can never quite place. First couple weeks were standard new guy stuff. In processing at Patton Hall, PT at 0530, learning how to operate the D7 dozers and the route clearance vehicles without killing ourselves or anyone else. Nights were loud. Guys playing spades, arguing over Call of Duty stats. Someone always blasting music through a Bluetooth speaker until lights out. I didn't think anything of the building itself. It was just barracks. Crappy plumbing, flickering lights in the stairwell, the usual. That changed on a Thursday. We'd spent the entire day at the Engineer Live Fire Range, digging fighting positions and practicing hasty road repair under simulated contact. By the time we got back, it was 20:30. Showers, chow, rack. I was dead tired. Fell asleep in my PTs around 2300. I woke up at what felt like 0230. Room was pitch black, except for the blue glow of the exit sign down the hall. Everyone else was out cold. I could hear Ramirez snoring 2 racks over. But there was another sound underneath it. Low, steady, words. I am an American soldier. I am a warrior and a member of a team. It was the soldier's creed, not shouted, not recited for PT. Spoken quietly, like someone reading it to themselves in the dark to stay focused. The voice was deeper than any of the guys in my bay, rough, older, and with a slight southern drawl that sounded more 1940s newsreel than modern Kentucky. I figured someone was messing with me. Maybe one of the team leaders had left their phone playing a recording. I sat up. Hey, knock it off. Silence. Then it started again, a little louder. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit. I will never leave a fallen comrade. This time I could tell it wasn't coming from inside our bay. It was coming through the wall, from the unoccupied bay next door. That side had been empty for weeks. Half the platoon was downrange for a JRTC rotation. I grabbed my phone for light and walked barefoot down the hall. The door to the next bay was cracked open about 3 inches. I pushed it wider. Empty. Perfectly made racks, lockers closed, no gear anywhere. Moonlight came through the windows in long silver bars across the floor. The creed kept going, now clear as if the speaker was standing right in front of me. I stepped inside. Who's in here? The voice stopped. Then, soft, almost conversational. You're new. My blood turned to ice water. I spun around. Nothing. Just shadows and empty bunks. But the temperature in the room had dropped hard. My breath fogged in the phone light. I backed toward the door. That's when I saw him. He was standing at the far end, near the last window, half in silhouette. Tall, shoulders square, wearing what looked like olive-drab wool fatigues, the old WWII pattern, not OCP or multicam. A steel pot helmet sat on the bunk beside him. His hands were clasped behind his back like an instructor waiting for a formation to come to attention. He turned his head slowly. Even in the dark, I could see his face was wrong. Too pale, eyes sunken, skin stretched tight over bone. He looked at me for maybe 3 seconds. Then he spoke again. Lights out was 10 minutes ago, Private. You're out of uniform. I don't remember running. I just remember hitting the hallway, slamming the door behind me, and not stopping until I was back in my own rack with the blanket pulled over my head like I was 12 years old. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would crack a rib. The next morning I told Corporal Diaz what happened. He didn't laugh. He just nodded once, like he'd heard it before. "That's Sergeant Wilkins," he said. "Drill sergeant here in 44. dropped dead of a coronary during a night ruck march out by the Gold Vault access road. They say he still does bed checks, or still writes people up for having gear out of place, still expects soldiers to be soldiers, even the ones who aren't supposed to be here anymore. I tried to brush it off, told myself it was sleep deprivation, shadows, maybe carbon monoxide from the old heating system, but that night it happened again. Same time, same creed. Only this time the footsteps started right outside my bay. Slow, deliberate. One boot, then the other. Stopped at my door. I didn't open it. I just lay there listening while the voice on the other side of the wood quietly recited, "Form up, full battle rattle. We move in 5 mics." The knob turned. Once. Twice. Then the footsteps moved on and down the hall. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. After that third encounter, I started keeping notes. Times, exact phrases, descriptions. I still have the notebook. A page after page of the same thing. 0237. Creed again. 0312. Recover your weapon, Private. No one dropped anything. 0419. Footsteps stopped at my rack. Cold spot on my left arm like someone rested a hand there. I asked around quietly. Turns out, almost every guy who's lived in Building 47 longer than 6 months has a story. Different details, same feeling. Like someone is still running the barracks according to 1944 standards, and they're not happy with how lax we've become. I moved out 3 months later when a slot opened in a newer building. Never told my chain of command the full story. What was I going to say? Sergeant Wilkins is mad I left my boots unlaced. But sometimes, even now, years later, when I'm staying in transient billeting on another post, I wake up at 0230 for no reason at all. And for just a second, I hear boots in the hallway. Chapter 2. Shadows on the Wall. I arrived at Fort Knox in February 2021 after a year-long deployment to Erbil with 2 8 Cavalry. Coming off back-to-back rotations in CENTCOM, the post felt almost peaceful. Green hills, actual seasons, no incoming indirect fire. My new assignment was with a line troop in the 1st ABCT. They put us in Building 112, one of the mid-century barracks near the Armour School headquarters. It had been renovated in the early 2000s. New windows, updated electrical, decent HVAC, but they left the original interior walls mostly intact. That included the murals. The murals were painted sometime in the late 1950s, right after Korea. Huge panoramic scenes covering entire walls in the day room and along the main hallways. M46 patterns charging across frozen hills. An infantry advancing behind smoke screens, artillery pieces spitting fire. They were faded now, colours muted to olive, tan, and washed out red, but still detailed. You could make out individual faces on the tank commanders, the way their goggles sat on their helmets, the tension in a loader's shoulders as he rammed another round home. Most guys walked past them without a second thought. I did too, at first. Our troop had just finished a brutal 2-week gunnery cycle at the Knox Multipurpose Range Complex. We'd been pulling 18-hour days, troubleshooting thermal sights, zeroing main guns, and trying not to cook ourselves inside the turrets. When we finally got back to barracks on a Friday night, half the platoon took off on 4-day passes. I stayed behind, had some paperwork to finish, and honestly just wanted quiet. I showered, I grabbed a protein shake and crashed on my rack around 21:30. I woke up around 00:45 to a sound I couldn't place at first. A slow, deliberate scraping, like someone dragging a knife tip across plaster. Not loud, but persistent. Scratch, scratch, scratch. It was coming from the wall, directly across from my bunk, the one with the biggest mural. A burning T-3485 being overrun by American tanks near the Chausin Reservoir. I sat up and turned on my phone flashlight. The sound stopped. Everything looked normal. The mural was unchanged. Same frozen landscape, same soldiers locked in mid-action. I lay back down, chalking it up to pipes, or settling building materials. Old bricks do weird things at night. Then it started again. Slower this time, more intentional. Scratch, pause. Scratch, pause. I got out of bed and walked over. Upon the wall felt cold, colder than the rest of the room. I put my palm flat against it. The plaster was like ice. And then I saw it. One of the painted figures, a dismounted tanker in winter gear, crouched beside a disabled Sherman, was moving. Not a lot, just his head. Slowly turning toward me. I jerked my hand back like I'd been burned. My pulse was already hammering. I told myself it was the light playing tricks, the way the flashlight beam reflected off uneven paint. I stepped closer, anyway. The figure blinked. Not a trick of light. A deliberate, heavy blink. Then his mouth opened, just a crack, and a voice came out. Not loud, not even loud enough to wake anyone in the next room, but clear, hoarse, like someone whose lungs had been scorched by diesel smoke and frostbite. Still burning in here. I stumbled backward, hit the edge of my rack, and sat down hard. The figure's arm lifted, slow, stiff, like the joint hadn't moved in decades. He reached toward the edge of the mural, fingers pressing against the painted border as if trying to push through the wall into the real world. I couldn't breathe right. My chest felt crushed. I wanted to yell, to wake someone, but my throat locked up. All I could do was stare while the rest of the mural started to shift. The burning T-34 flickered. Real flames licked up from the painted turret. The smoke thickened, curling off the wall into the room. Grey, acrid, smelling like burning rubber and flesh. The soldiers in the foreground began to move too. A loader ducking as if avoiding shrapnel. A driver clawing at his hatch. Their mouths opened in silent screams. Then the voice again. This time from multiple directions, overlapping. Get us out. We're still in the tank. Still cooking. I scrambled for the door. My hand hit the knob, twisted. It didn't turn. Locked. From the inside. I pounded on it, yelled for anyone in the hallway. No answer. Behind me, the mural was alive now. Figures climbing over each other, hands reaching, faces pressed to the surface like people trapped behind glass. One of them, a staff sergeant, chevrons visible on his sleeve, locked eyes with me. "You see us now, don't you?" he said. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "We've been waiting for someone to look. To really look." I slid down the door, back against it, staring. The cold from the wall was spreading across the floor, creeping up my bare legs. My breath fogged in front of my face. How do I help?" I finally managed. The staff sergeant's painted face softened, just for a second. "Tell them we're still here. Tell them the fire never went out." The mural shuddered. The flames flared brighter, then dimmed. One by one the figures stilled, returned to their original poses, frozen again. The smoke dissipated. The wall warmed. The knob turned freely in my hand. I don't remember opening the door or running down the hall. I just remember bursting into the CQ desk, sweating, shaking, telling the duty NCO I needed to speak to someone right now. They thought I was having a panic attack or maybe a flashback. They sat me down, gave me water, called behavioral health the next morning. I didn't fight it. I just kept my mouth shut about the mural. But I went back the next day, alone. The wall was normal. No movement, no smoke, no voices. I asked around quietly after that. Turns out the murals had a reputation. Guys who'd lived in 112 longer than a year usually had something to say. One corporal told me about waking up to the sound of tank hatches slamming shut inside the walls. Another said he'd seen silhouettes running along the mural at night, like they were trying to escape the frame. A retired first sergeant I met at the NCO club later that year was the most direct. He'd been stationed there in 2003. Those paintings were done by a Korean war vet who came back shell-shocked, he told me. He put his buddies on the wall, guys who burned alive when their tanks got hit. He said if he painted them, they'd have somewhere to go. Somewhere they weren't trapped inside burning steel. He took a long pull from his beer. Problem is, they never really left. I moved out of Building 112 2 months later, requested a swap to a newer billet on the other side of post. Chain of command approved it without asking too many questions. I still drive past 112 sometimes. The windows are dark at night, like always. But if I slow down and look at the right angle, I swear I can see the faint glow of firelight moving behind the glass, right where the mural sits. And sometimes, when I'm half asleep in a different barracks on a different post, I hear it again. The slow scrape of metal on metal. A hatch being forced open from the inside. Chapter 3. The Empty Bunk. I was assigned to Fort Knox in the spring of 2019 as a 42A Human Resources Officer, straight out of Captain's Career Course. They slotted me into the HRC building on post, but my billeting was in Building 63, a 3-story brick structure that had been standing since the late 1930s. The first floor was mostly offices now, but the upper 2 floors were still used as officer and senior NCO transient quarters. I got a private room on the 2nd floor. Small, but a single room was a luxury after years of shared bays. The room was basic: steel frame bed, wall locker, desk, one window overlooking the parking lot. The walls were painted that institutional pale green that every old army building seems to have. The mattress was thin, the pillow lumpy, but it beat sleeping in a tent. I noticed right away that the room had a peculiar layout. There were 2 bunks in the space, mine on the bottom, and an upper bunk that had clearly not been used in years. The top mattress was rolled and tied with twine, the sheets folded military style on the shelf above. No one had assigned a roommate, so I didn't think much of it. I figured the extra bunk was just left over from when the room housed 2 lieutenants. I was wrong. The first night I slept there was uneventful. Long day of in-processing, signing forms, getting my CAC updated, learning the HRC systems. I was exhausted. I fell asleep around 22:30 with the window cracked, listening to the low rumble of a convoy rolling past on Chaffee Avenue. I woke up around 3:15 to breathing. Not my own. It was above me. Heavy, slow, laboured. The kind of breathing you hear from someone fighting pain, someone who's been hurt badly and is trying not to scream. Each inhale sounded wet, like fluid shifting in the lungs. Each exhale ended in a faint, rattling wheeze. I froze, eyes wide in the dark. The room was cold, much colder than it had been when I went to sleep. My breath fogged when I exhaled. The breathing continued, steady, coming from directly above me, from the upper bunk. I told myself it was the radiator. Old pipes, steam expanding. Anything but what it sounded like. Then it spoke. "Medic." The word was soft, almost a sigh. A man's voice, young, southern accent, barely above a whisper. I didn't move. I couldn't. My heart was slamming so hard I thought it would wake the whole floor. "Medic, it's in my back. Can't feel my legs." I swallowed, forced myself to speak. "Who's there?" No answer, just more breathing. Slower now, more pained. I reached up slowly, hand shaking, and felt the edge of the upper mattress. It was cold, damp, something wet soaked through the canvas. I pulled my hand back and looked at my fingers in the faint glow of the alarm clock. Blood, dark red, fresh, streaking my fingertips. I scrambled out of bed so fast I hit my head on the wall locker. I flipped on the overhead light. The upper bunk was empty. The mattress was rolled up exactly as it had been when I moved in. No sheets, no body, no blood. My hand was clean, not a trace. I stood there for almost a minute, breathing hard, staring at the bunk. Then I laughed, shaky, nervous. Sleep paralysis. A nightmare. I'd been stressed, that was all. I turned off the light and climbed back into bed. I didn't sleep again that night. The next night, it happened again. Same time. 0315. Same wet breathing. Same voice. "Medic, please. Shrapnel's deep. I can feel it moving." This time, I didn't speak. I just lay there, rigid, listening. After about 10 minutes, the breathing slowed, then stopped. Silence. I waited another half hour before I dared move. And the third night, I was ready. I'd borrowed a small tactical flashlight from one of the NCOs and set my phone to record audio. When the breathing started, I stayed perfectly still. I let it go on for a full minute before I spoke. "Who are you?" The breathing hitched, stopped. Then, quiet, almost polite. "Private First Class Daniel Hayes, 2nd Infantry Division, 1967. My mouth went dry. "How did you die?" A long pause. When he answered, his voice cracked. "Training accident. Live fire exercise. Mortar misfire. Piece of hot frag caught me in the lower back. I bled out on the floor of this room, right here. They used this as an aid station back then. Nobody told me I was already gone." I felt the air shift, like someone leaned over the edge of the bunk to look down at me. "You're in my spot, ma'am." I sat up fast. I didn't know. I'll move." "No," he interrupted. "Don't. You're the first one who answered. Everyone else just pretends they don't hear." I swallowed. "What do you want?" Another long silence. The room grew colder. My teeth started chattering. "I want someone to remember. They got cleaned the blood off the floor. They rolled up the mattress. They put a new guy in here the next week. They never told his family what really happened. They said it was an accident on the range. Not here. Not in this room." I nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see me in the dark. "I'll remember," I said. "I'll remember your name. Daniel Hayes, 1967. The breathing returned. Slower, calmer now. Almost relieved. "Thank you, Lieutenant." Then the room warmed. The air settled. The upper bunk creaked once, like someone shifting weight. Then nothing. I sat there until dawn. The next day I went to the Fort Knox Historical Office. I asked for training accident records from 1967 involving mortars and 2nd Infantry Division. The civilian archivist was polite but sceptical. She pulled a few folders. No mention of a Private Hayes dying in Building 63, but there was a one-line entry in a morning report from October 12th, 1967. PFC-D Hayes 2ID died of wounds received during training incident. Cause listed as misfired mortar round. Incident occurred at range. No further investigation required. No mention of the aid station. No mention of the room. I never told my chain of command. What would I say? That a dead private is still bleeding on the bunk above me. But I kept the promise. I wrote his name and date in the back of my field notebook. Every time I PCS'd, I carried that notebook. Every time I got promoted, I carried it. I still have it. And sometimes, when I'm staying in transient lodging on another post, when the lights are off and the building is quiet, I hear it again. Not loud, not angry, just soft breathing, and a single word whispered from the darkness above. Thanks, ma'am. Chapter 4. Footsteps in Formation. I'd been at Fort Knox since late 2021, assigned to 3-1 Cav as a section sergeant in one of the scout platoons. After 2 tours in the sandbox and a brief stint at Fort Riley, Knox felt almost tame. No sandstorms, no midnight rocket alerts, just tank gunnery, reconnaissance lanes, and the occasional 4-day pass to Louisville. My platoon lived in Building 89, a long, low brick barracks near the edge of the Armour Live-Fire complex. Built in 1952, renovated once in the 90s, never again. The rooms were small, 2 4-man bays with bunk beds, wall lockers, and a single window that looked out over a stretch of open training ground bordered by thick pine. We'd just come off a grueling 3-week rotation. Night reconnaissance missions, dismounted patrols, vehicle recovery drills in the rain. Everyone was beat. On the night of October 17th, 2022, most of the platoon scattered. Some to family housing, some to crash at a buddy's place off-post, a few to the bar. I stayed in. I had a stack of NCOERs to finish, and honestly just wanted silence. I locked the bay door, turned off the lights except for the desk lamp, and sat down to type. Around 02:30 I heard it. Footsteps. Not random. Not the usual late-night stumble of someone coming back from the latrine. This was cadence. Left, right, crisp, synchronized, the way a platoon moves when the drill sergeant calls it. The sound came from outside, right beneath my window, on the narrow strip of concrete sidewalk that ran along the building. I got up and pulled the blinds aside. Nothing. Empty pavement. Security lights casting long yellow pools. No one there. No shadows moving. Just wind moving the pines. I let the blinds drop and went back to the desk. Maybe a guard detail I didn't know about. Maybe the MPs running a PT test in the dark. I told myself that. Then the footsteps started again, louder, closer. They weren't just walking now, they were marching in place. The rhythm tightened, quick time, boots striking concrete in perfect unison. I could almost hear the faint metallic clink of web gear, the soft slap of rifle slings against plate carriers. I opened the window a crack. The sound poured in clearer. A full platoon, 30, maybe 40 sets of boots, marching in tight formation. I leaned out. Still nothing visible, just the empty sidewalk and the dark training field beyond. Then a voice, low, commanding, carrying the clipped tone of a squad leader from another decade. Left, 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 right, left. Eyes front. Maintain interval. Dress right, dress. The formation halted. Boots slammed down together. Silence for 2 heartbeats. Then the same voice, closer now, almost directly below my window. Prepare to move out. Full battle rattle. We're going back to the line. My skin prickled. I pulled my head back inside and shut the window. The marching resumed, moving away at first, then circling back. They were looping the building, passing beneath every window on this side. I grabbed my phone and started recording audio. You can still hear it today if you listen close. The steady crunch of boots, the occasional cough or low mutter, the soft jingle of kit. No voices clear enough to make out words except for the commands. I sat on my bunk and waited. The marching continued for almost 20 minutes, around the building, past my window, around again. Then it stopped. Dead silence. I exhaled, thinking it was over. That's when the doorknob turned. Not violently. Slowly. Deliberately. Someone testing it. The lock held. I dead-bolted it. But the knob kept turning, back and forth. Patient. Then the voice, right on the other side of the door. Open the hatch, Sergeant. We need 1 more for the count. I didn't answer. I didn't move. My pulse was in my throat. The knob stopped. Footsteps retreated down the hallway, inside the building now. I heard them clearly, boots on tile, moving toward the stairwell. Then nothing. I waited another 10 minutes before I cracked the door. Hallway empty. Lights on at the far end. No one. I stepped out, checked the stairwell. Nothing. Back inside, I locked the door again, double-checked the bolt, and sat against the wall with my back to the corner. At 04:10, the marching started again. This time, it wasn't outside. It was in the hallway. Slow, methodical. Coming closer. The same cadence, the same halt, the same voice. Section, attention. I could feel the vibration through the floor, dozens of boots snapping together. Then the voice again, inches from my door. Last chance, Sergeant. We're short a man. You know the drill. Fall in. The knob rattled harder this time. The door flexed in the frame like someone was leaning their full weight against it. I whispered, barely audible. I'm not going anywhere with you. The pressure on the door stopped. Silence. Then, softly, almost disappointed. Suit yourself. We'll be back tomorrow night. The footsteps receded. The marching faded down the corridor, down the stairs, out into the night. I didn't sleep. I sat there until PT formation at 05:30, listening for any sound. The next night, I wasn't alone. I told my platoon sergeant, Master Sergeant Caldwell, what happened. He didn't laugh. He'd heard versions of the story before. He pulled 2 other NCOs, and we sat up together in my bay with the lights on. Weapons cleaned and ready on the bunks like we were prepping for a patrol. They came again at 02:30. Same cadence, same loop around the building. And same voice calling commands. But this time when they reached my window, the voice changed. It wasn't the squad leader anymore. It was multiple voices, overlapping, tired, resigned. We were supposed to come home. They told us the war was over. We're still waiting for the trucks. Caldwell stood up, walked to the window and opened it wide. You'll need to stand down, he said, voice steady. The mission changed. You're released. For a second, the marching stopped. Complete silence outside. Then one voice, young, almost relieved, answered, acknowledged. The footsteps faded. Not walking away. Just gone. like someone turned off a recording. We sat there until dawn. No one spoke much. I moved to a different building 2 weeks later. Chain of command approved the swap quietly, no questions. But every October, around the 17th, I still wake up at 0230, no matter where I am. Fort Bliss, Fort Cavazos, even on leave at home. I wake up, and for just a moment I hear it. Boots on concrete, a platoon forming up in the dark, waiting for one more man to fall in. Chapter 5. The Locked Latrine. I arrived at Fort Knox in March 2020, right as everything started shutting down. Basic training finished early, AIT got compressed, and suddenly I was a brand new 19K, armour crewman, assigned to a tank company in the 194th. They stuck most of us, new privates, in Building 214, one of the older female barracks on the far side of post near the armour school. It was supposed to be temporary housing while they figured out COVID protocols. 4 two-room bays, communal latrines at each end of the hall, the usual setup. Except the whole company was on lockdown, no passes, no off-post anything. Just barracks, virtual classes, and PT in the parking lot. The first couple weeks were weird but manageable. We were all on edge. Masks, temperature checks, constant hand sanitizer, but the building itself didn't feel any different from basic. Old brick, thin walls, fluorescent lights that buzzed when they got warm. The latrine on our floor was big. 6 stalls, 6 sinks. Big mirrors over the vanity. Tiled floor that was always cold no matter how hot the showers ran. The trouble started around week 4. I was on fireguard duty one night, 0200 to 0400, sitting in the hallway with a clipboard, checking doors every 30 minutes. Everyone else was asleep. Around 3:10 I heard crying. Soft at first, like someone trying to keep it quiet. It was coming from the latrine at the far end of the hall. I figured one of the girls was having a rough night. Homesick, stressed, whatever. So I walked down to check. The door was closed. Not just closed, locked from the inside. I knocked lightly. "Hey, you okay in there?" No answer, just the crying. It sounded muffled, like someone had their face in their hands. I tried the knob. Definitely locked. "Open up. It's fireguard. I need to make sure you're good." Still nothing. The crying got a little louder. Deep, broken sobs that didn't sound like any of the girls I knew. It had this old, tired quality to it, like someone who'd been crying for hours and still couldn't stop. I knocked again, harder. "Hey, open the door or I'm getting the CQ." The crying stopped abruptly. Then a voice, female, quiet, shaking, came through the wood. "I can't. The door won't move. I've tried." I frowned. "Push on it." It's probably just stuck." "I've been pushing for I don't know how long. It's locked from your side." That didn't make sense. The latrine doors didn't have exterior locks. They were push open from either side. I checked the handle again. No key slot, no deadbolt. Just a simple push bar. "Hold on," I said. "I'm coming in." I shoved my shoulder against the door. It didn't budge. Not even a little. I took a step back and rammed it with my full weight. Nothing. The door rattled in the frame but stayed shut. The voice, again, smaller now. "Please, hurry, it's getting cold." I ran back to the CQ desk and grabbed the master keyring. The duty NCO. Sergeant Lopez was half asleep in the chair. I explained quick. She grabbed a flashlight and followed me. We got back to the latrine door. I slid the master key in. It wouldn't turn. The key fit. But the cylinder wouldn't rotate. Lopez tried. Same thing. "Something's wrong with the lock," she muttered. Then we both heard it, clearer now that we were close. A woman sobbing, and water running. Not a faucet. A steady, heavy flow, like a tub filling or a shower left on full blast. Lopez banged on the door. "This is Sergeant Lopez. Open up now." The crying cut off. Silence. Then the water sound grew louder, rushing, splashing, like something heavy was being dragged through it. Lopez looked at me. "We're forcing it." We both hit the door together, shoulder to shoulder. On the third try, the frame cracked and the door flew open. The latrine was dark. All the lights were off. The emergency exit sign glowed red above the far door. Water was everywhere. Puddles on the tile, dripping from the sinks, pooling around the stalls. But none of the faucets were running. In the mirror directly across from us, fogged thick like someone had just taken a hot shower, there were words written in the condensation. Clear block letters. "Help me home." I stepped inside. The air was freezing. My breath fogged instantly. The water on the floor wasn't clear. It had a faint pink tint, like diluted blood. Lopez swept her flashlight across the room. Nothing. No one in the stalls. No one hiding. Just wet tile and fogged mirrors. Then I saw her. In the mirror, not behind me, but in the reflection. She was standing right where I was standing. A woman in an old WAC uniform. Olive skirt, tan shirt, garrison cap. Her hair was wet, plastered to her face. Her skin was pale, lips blue. She looked straight at me through the glass. Her mouth moved, but the voice came from behind us. Soft, wet, like she was speaking through water. "They told me I'd be home for Christmas. 1944. The transport sank in the river. I was coming back from leave. They never found me." I turned around. Nothing there, just empty latrine. In the mirror, she lifted a hand, slow, trembling, and pressed it to the glass. The fogged letters smeared under her palm. "I'm still here, still waiting for the boat." Lopez whispered, "Jesus." The lights flickered on, sudden, blinding. The water on the floor was gone. Dry tile, no pink, no puddles. The mirrors were clear, no writing. But the smell stayed. Damp concrete, river mud, something metallic underneath. We backed out. Lopez locked the door behind us. We didn't speak until we were back at the CQ desk. The next morning we told the company commander. He listened, didn't say much, just nodded, and said he'd have maintenance check the plumbing and the locks. No one else on the floor reported anything that night. But I couldn't stay in that building. I requested a room change the same day. They moved me to a different floor, different latrine. I never went back to that one. A few weeks later, one of the older NCOs pulled me aside after formation. Staff Sergeant Greer. She'd been at Knox since 2008. She told me about a Women's Army Corps private who drowned in 1944. The story was hushed up. Training accident, official report said. But the rumour was she'd gone swimming in the Salt River during a rare off-post pass. Current took her. They never recovered the body. Some people said she'd been trying to get home for the holidays. Some said she'd been meeting someone she wasn't supposed to. Greer looked at me for a long time. Every few years, as someone sees her, always in a latrine, always asking to go home. I didn't tell anyone else, not my battle buddies, not my family. I just kept my head down and waited for the lockdown to end. But sometimes, late at night, even now, years later, when I'm in a hotel room or a barracks on another post, I'll hear water running. Not loud, just steady, persistent. And if I look in the mirror long enough, I'll see fog creeping across the glass. And letters. Faint at first, then clearer. Chapter 6. Echoes of Command. I took command of a training company at Fort Knox in January 2023. After staff time at the Pentagon and a deployment to Poland, the assignment felt almost routine. Oversee armor transition courses, manage simulator blocks, run the occasional field exercise. They gave me quarters in Building 304, old officer family housing converted to unaccompanied officer billets back in the late 2000s. Second floor, corner room, private bath, small living area with a desk and a single bed. The building had history. Constructed in 1942 as part of the wartime expansion, used briefly as a transient officers' club before being turned into quarters. The walls were thick plaster, the floors hardwood under thin carpet, and the heat came from ancient cast-iron radiators that clanked like they were angry every time they kicked on. Most nights were quiet. I'd come back from the motor pool or the sim bays around 2100, review training schedules, answer emails, maybe watch a briefing video. I kept an old tabletop radio on the desk, an AM/FM unit I'd had since ROTC days. It picked up local stations fine. But sometimes at night the signal would drift, static rolling in like distant artillery. That started happening more often in March. The first time I noticed, it was a Tuesday, around 23:30. I was reviewing the next day's gunnery roster when the radio hissed to life without me touching the dial. No music, no DJ, just a voice, male, clipped, mid-Atlantic accent straight out of a 1940s training film. Alpha 6, this is Bravo 6. Contact 11 o'clock, range 400. Engaging with heat. Over. I froze. The voice was calm, professional, the way you hear in old war movies. I reached over and turned the volume up. Static crackled. Then another voice answered, deeper, older. Roger, Bravo 6. Continue engagement. Watch your left flank. We've got movement in the tree line. I turned the radio off. The room went silent, except for the radiator ticking. I sat there for a minute, heart rate elevated, telling myself it was bleed over from some late-night History Channel rerun or a ham radio operator playing games. I unplugged the radio and went to bed. It didn't stop. The next night, same time, almost to the minute, the radio came on again. This time the voices were louder, overlapping, urgent. Gunner, support tank. Identified. Up. On the way. A sharp metallic clang, like a breech block slamming shut, came through the speaker, followed by a muffled boom that made the desk rattle. I yanked the plug out of the wall. Silence. I sat, staring at the dead radio for 10 minutes before I plugged it back in. Nothing. Just static when I turned the dial. I started keeping notes. March 14th, 20:34:20. Radio activates. In orders to advance on grid reference. Voices mention Panzer IVs and 88s in defilade. March 16th, 23:15. Live fire adjustment. Adjust fire over. Coordinates called. Sound of incoming artillery. Whistle, then impact. March 19th, 00:45. Voice identifying as Colonel Harlan, 4th Armoured, directing a night attack. Push through the gap. Do not stop until you reach the high ground. Every time I unplugged it, the radio stayed dead. Every time I plugged it back in later, it was normal FM/AM. but between 2300 and 0100 it became something else. On March 22nd, I decided to record it. Phone on the desk, voice memo running. The radio came alive at 23:38. Command, this is Sabre 6. We are combat ineffective. Our 3 tanks burning, crews dismounted. Request immediate medevac and resupply. Over. A pause. Static. Then a different voice. Older. Weary. Almost resigned. Sabre 6. Negative on medevac. Hold position. We're pulling back to the rally point. Leave the wounded. That's an order. The room temperature dropped. My breath fogged. The radiator stopped clanking. The voice continued. Colonel Harlan speaking. We've lost the ridge. Fall back to secondary defensive line. Destroy anything you can't carry. Godspeed. The transmission ended in a burst of static that sounded like machine gun fire. I stopped the recording. My hands were shaking. I played it back immediately. Nothing. Just dead air where the voices had been. The file was blank from 2338 to 2351. 11 minutes erased. That night I stayed up. Lights on. Radio unplugged and in the closet. Around 0040, the radiator started again. Slow, rhythmic clanks, like someone tapping Morse code. Then the room filled with faint, overlapping echoes, not from the radio, from everywhere. The walls, the ceiling, the floor. Orders, coordinates, sit reps, casualty reports. All layered, all urgent, all from different eras. Move to phase line blue. Negative contact, continue surveillance. Request permission to engage. Hold fire, friendly armor in the area. Sir, we're taking casualties. Fall back, fall back. The voices built until they were a roar. Dozens of commanders, platoon leaders, tank commanders, all speaking at once across decades. I stood in the middle of the room, arms out, shouting into the noise. Stand down! The war is over! Stand down! The clamour peaked, then stopped. Dead silence. The radiator hissed once, softly, like a long exhale. Then a single voice, clear, close, directly behind me. Is it? I spun around. Empty room. But the air still felt heavy, charged, like right before a lightning strike. I didn't sleep. At 600, I went straight to the chaplain's office. I didn't tell him everything, just that I was having trouble sleeping in my quarters and needed temporary relocation. He didn't ask for details. He made a call. By 1400, I was moved to a different building on the other side of post. I kept the recordings, the blank ones, the one with 13 seconds of static that somehow peaks at exactly 92 decibels, the same volume as sustained tank main gun fire at 5 meters. I never plugged that radio in again, but sometimes, when I'm in a hotel on TDY or back in garrison quarters somewhere else, I'll wake up at 23:38. No reason, just wide awake. And for a few seconds, maybe 10, maybe 20, I hear it. A low voice, calm and certain, coming from the darkness beside the bed. Captain, we're still holding the line. Awaiting your orders. I don't answer. I just lie there until it fades. Because some nights I'm not sure who's still commanding or who's still listening. Chapter 7. The Final Watch. I was 23 days from retirement when it all came together. 31 years in, 3 combat tours, 2 Bronze Stars, a shelf full of challenge coins, and a drawer full of DD214 paperwork waiting for my signature. Fort Knox was my last duty station, back where I started as a private in 1993. They gave me a quiet slot in the Brigade S3 shop, mostly admin and mentoring platoon sergeants. No more ruck marches, no more motor pools in the rain, just a desk, a coffee pot, and a countdown calendar. They housed me in Building 47, same red brick barracks where I'd lived as a young tanker 30 years earlier. Full circle. I didn't ask for it. The assignment NCO just handed me the key and said, "You're in 212, top floor, corner room, quiet wing." Quiet. That was the joke. I'd heard the stories my whole career. Wilkins in 47, the murals in 112, the breathing bunk in 63, the marching platoon in 89, the drowned whack in 214, the radio in 304. Every building had its ghost. Every generation added a layer. I'd always listened politely, nodded, changed the subject. Never admitted I believed any of it. Never admitted I'd felt things myself over the years. Cold spots on summer nights. Footsteps when no one was there. The sudden smell of diesel and cordite in empty motor pools. But in those last weeks of 2024, something shifted. It started small, November 18th. I woke at 02:37. Same time Wilkins always showed up. No whispers, no creed, just the feeling of being watched. I sat up, room empty. But my wall locker door was cracked open. I always locked it. Inside, my old field jacket, Vietnam-era surplus I'd kept since my dad gave it to me, was hanging on the front hook instead of the back, like someone had taken it out, looked at it, hung it back facing the room. I closed the door, locked it, went back to bed. Next night, same time. The radiator hissed once, sharp, like someone exhaling through clenched teeth. Then the floor creaked. Not settling, deliberate steps. 3 paces across the room. Stopped at the foot of my rack. I didn't open my eyes. I just said low, "I'm retiring soon. You got business? Handle it quick." No answer. But the air got heavy, thick, like right before a thunderstorm. I smelled it then. Old wool, gun oil, wet canvas, and something coppery. Blood maybe, or old pennies. The next week it built. November the 25th. My boots were lined up at parade rest beside the bed when I woke. I hadn't placed them there. November 27th. The lights flickered at 03:10. When they steadied, every shadow in the room looked like a soldier at attention. November 29th. I came back from chow to find my desk chair turned toward the empty bunk across from mine, like someone had been sitting there waiting. December 3rd. The whispers returned. Not just Wilkins, multiple voices, overlapping. Some reciting the soldier's creed, some calling grid coordinates, some giving casualty reports, all at once. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened until it faded. December 7th. I found handwriting on the inside of my wall locker door, pencil, faint but legible. "We carried the line so you could stand on it. Don't forget us when you leave." I stared at it for a long time. Then I got a rag, wiped it clean, and said out loud, "I never did." That night they came all at once. Every sound I'd ever heard in 31 years hit at the same time. Boots in the hallway. Full platoon cadence. Scraping on plaster, mural figures trying to climb out. Wet breathing from the empty bunk above. Water running in the latrine down the corridor. Radio static spitting orders from a war that ended before I was born. And underneath it all, Sergeant Wilkins' voice, calm and clear. "Final formation. Master Sergeant C. Report. I stood up, slowly, room freezing, breath fogging. On shadows moving in the corners like soldiers shifting weight. I walked to the centre of the room, faced the door, came to attention. Master Sergeant Raymond C. Present. Sergeant Wilkins. Silence, thick, waiting. Then the voices layered again, not angry, tired, almost relieved. We held the ridge. We burned in the turret. We bled out on the floor. We drowned coming home. We waited for the trucks that never came. I swallowed. I know. A long pause. Then Wilkins again. Closer now, like he was standing at my shoulder. You carried it after us. You kept the standard. Now you're stepping off post. What happens to the watch? I thought about it. 31 years of waking up at dark 30, of checking gear, of making sure the younger ones knew what right looked like, of carrying names I'd never forget. I pass it on, I said. Same as you did. The room exhaled. The cold eased, the shadows stilled. One last voice, young, almost soft, spoke from somewhere near the window. Tell them we did our job. I nodded. I will. The radiator clanked once, then silence. Real silence, not the heavy kind. The kind that comes after a long patrol when everyone finally racks out. I stood there another 20 minutes. Nothing moved, nothing spoke. The next morning I went to the PX, bought a small brass plaque. Engraved it myself on the machine they have in the back. To the watch building, 47 and all who served. Here never forgotten. I screwed it into the wall beside the doorframe. Low, unobtrusive. The kind of thing most people won't notice unless they're looking. I retired December 20th, 2024. Out-processed. Signed the last form. Walked through the main gate one final time. Well, I still wake up at 2:30 sometimes, no matter where I am. New house in Tennessee, hotel on a road trip, guest room at my sister's. I wake up. Listen. No boots, no whispers, no breathing, just quiet. But every once in a while, just once in a great while, I'll smell it again. Faint, fade in, gun oil, wet canvas, old wool, and I'll smile a little, because I know they're still there, still holding the line, still watching, and for the first time in 31 years, I can finally sleep through the night.